Welcome to the Vigor Life Podcast, a source of inspiration, lessons, stories, skill sets, mindsets, and strategies to invigorate and expand all areas of your life. Let's go. Hey, what's going on? Coach Luka here, back with the Vigor Ground Podcast, and my usual, I would say, like rocking it ahead to not be in the mic like Gene wants me to be, but hey, it's all good. So, today I wanted to talk about something. It's a book name. It's a book name, but it's really what I'm going to talk about is like how to get ahead in life, and you could like fill in the blank or whatever, right? So, we could talk about becoming, when I say, a body transformation and getting lean, I mean like getting lean for good, right? Or leaner or healthier or move better or get stronger or, get ahead in your career or save more money or, fill in the blank here for good, right? ... for good. And the book, and the thing is, as I was kind of driving over here and I was thinking, all right, what's going to be today's topic? Because I always write down a lot of stuff as far as like the questions that I get, conversations I have, things that are relevant with the people that we coach here at Vigor, or I coach in my coaching programs in the pack and training forwards and all these different things. And essentially what came to mind was the title, and it's probably because I really do love this book, and it's So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newton, which is an awesome book, and you should definitely go pick it up and read it. But then the follow-up book is Deep Work, and they really go well together. And that's actually a quote by Steve Martin, because it said like, how do you kind of like succeed? How do you did you get to where you are? I mean, like, hey, just be so good that they can't ignore you. And rather than just give you this sentence and then just kind of leave you with it and go. What I want to, like, the reason why I'm bringing this up is this. We kind of live in it, and I'm being maybe somewhat stereotypical here, but this is what I noticed from my experience. It is that people want to kind of like get to the thing without doing the things that get you there. Right. You can quote me on that. But like, what I mean by that is, right, it's like, oh man, I want to build a 6-figure online business. And I haven't really coached many people. Right. It's like I haven't really put in the hours of coaching, but let me get to the 6 figures and then I'll kind of figure out all the rest of the stuff. Or, I just want to build this big business without actually understanding what builds a big business, right? There's a lot of components to all this stuff. It's like if you look at somebody that's 35, 40 years old and they move really well and they're healthy and, they're lean. I'm not going to go say like ripped, cover ripped, but like they're lean, like they just look in great shape. They're strong. They're a happier person because they don't have any aches and pains. And if you talk to them about like what they're doing, I guarantee you, they're probably not going to go like, well, I did this 12-week program. Like, here's where I was before. Like, if that's how they are, it's a lifestyle, right? It's something that they did very, very well over time. And essentially, like, you're not, right? If you go to them and go, hey man, like, I noticed you're like this, right? They're so good that you can't ignore them. Now, they might be so good you can't ignore them in the area of, habits that support a lean body or a healthy body, right? Or maybe you're like, man, like, I can't believe, like, you guys have gone through ups and downs, but like your relationship is stronger than ever. Like, your family's tight, like the way you treat your kids, right? It's like they're so good in that area, like the relationship and family, that you can't ignore it. And every one of those people like put in the time and the work, like, and over a span of time to where it was who they became to do that, right? So the thing is, when you try to jump the gun, like, let me market myself first before I do the thing, right? And like, I have these, it's kind of like an interesting philosophy on this, because we do live in a day and age. Okay, if you're building your business and you want to get yourself out there, marketing is important, but, and you'll kind of see me weave in and out of different topics here, but it all comes back to the same foundation of what I'm talking about, right? If you, when growing a business, when doing anything, like, you want it to grow organically, right? We always talk about referrals, that like you're doing something so great, people can't ignore you. And so they talk about you. They can't not talk about you, right? Because you're so excited about it. It's just, if I go to a restaurant, the food was unbelievable. Nobody has to ask me about like how unbelievable the food was. I'm like, man, like, you got to go to this place. Have this. It was great. Or I had this service. I went to the service. It was amazing, right? So that's a foundational thing. And without that foundational, see, now you're so good that people can't ignore you, and kind of the word of mouth and the marketing works itself. Now, it doesn't mean that as you grow a business, as you scale a business, that, you shouldn't learn how to market. You shouldn't learn the principles of copywriting and persuasion and influence and leadership and all these different things, because I believe that you must do that. But your craft, your skill set, whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's a hobby, right? Even if it's a hobby and you put in the time and effort and focused work, deep work on that, right? You're going to get good to a point where people just can't ignore you anymore. Now, I'm going to give you an example of my good friend, the super Asian Hugh. And the reason why I use this, because I like to use examples in life, and maybe not always just like, here's my example, right? But, Hugh's been training here with me for a long time, and probably like 6-7 years at Vigor. He's become what we call him the forever intern, right? He trains it like 5-6 days a week, and he's not an intern, but he kind of is he's kind of part of the team. But he made a huge transformation, like body wise, right? Put on I think 20-25 pounds, got leaner when he put on the 25 pounds, and it's just consistent. It's a way of life. And about, I think 6 or 9 months ago, he was like, hey man, I really want to start kind of recording my training process, my training process, and just putting it on Instagram, so I can look back and go oh wow, okay, here's where I was, here's where I've gone. And obviously to do that you got to take pictures, and to a degree it's I don't want to take crappy pictures, so I want to get better at taking pictures. And he went from taking iPhone pictures to asking people hey, how do you get the lighting like this? How do you edit this so it looks more like this, right? Just being curious and wanting to get better. Not because he wants to, be a photographer or anything like that, but just the art of man, I want my Instagram account to look good, and to look back at it and go hey, this is almost like a collage timeline of my training and life and stuff like that. And, it went from that to constantly going wow, man, okay, now I want to make it look like this. Oh, I saw this picture, I want to make it look like this. To getting a better camera for it, to, hanging around, Jim, who takes some pics, and now he's going, but I'll get to this, and going hey, how do you do this or that or the other? And long story short, over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months, I don't know exact timeline, but put in hundreds and hundreds of hours of studying how to do photos, different lighting, different, whatever. And, you, of course, you wouldn't call Hugh a professional, but in this time frame, he really put in the work, the focused work on editing, on shooting, on getting a better camera, getting better lenses, getting all these different things, to where now people go hey man, I'm looking at your photos, man, they're really dope, they're really cool. Sometimes some of the members be hey, would you just shoot this for me, or take this for me? And think about that. If you think about that, he became so good that somebody can't ignore him. And now he's hey, let me hang around, Gene, because Gene is on that high level, really doing crazy stuff with camera work and, video and everything, and just following him around and going hey, how do you do this? How do you do this? Right. So the point behind this is that right, he didn't go and say yo, I'm dope on camera, right? After 7 shots, it's thousands of photos later, the work speaks for itself, and then it opens up doors and creates momentum. And I think that that's the thing that we keep forgetting, right? We keep forgetting that, man, what does it really mean to become excellent at something, or very good at something, or a master at something? And there's an awesome book called, The Talent Code, which talks about myelin, the conductor between, the fat conductor, how we become better at stuff, right? Let's just call it that. And why there's certain talent pools in the world for baseball, and for instance, why did all these amazing artists and sculptors come out from Florence, this small city in Italy, in a small time frame? And it was just some of the greatest, like I said, artists of all time came from that time frame. And you go back and you study it, and you realize, because in those times, in a really young age, those guys had to basically apprentice, right? And they were apprenticing under masters, and they were apprenticing under masters for 10 years. If you apprenticed for 3 years, you didn't do anything. You're what? You just apprenticed for 3 years? Man, we're not even smelling you. You'd apprentice from time you were 8 years old to when you were 18 years old, right? And then at 18, you're kind of like getting started, right? And then by the time you were like 30, maybe you were a master, like 22 years later. And now, and we're talking about the greatest, people in the history, right? That we still talk about centuries and centuries later now. And now we have this instant gratification where it's kind of like, man, like, but I want that right now. I want to shoot that one dope video that gets 17 trillion views because it just went viral. But the thing is, even if it does, because it does happen, right? Even if it does. So something you do gets noticed and goes viral. Here's the problem though, right? Whether you were lucky, whether it was good timing, whether it was whatever, if you didn't do the work to get to that place, like you'll fall apart because you don't have that skill set on a daily basis. It's the same example as in fitness when you go, you do a 30-day shred or detox or whatever, the name is now and shit. Like it's like you do it and you get this result. You do get this result, but it's not who you become, right? It's something you did for a really short period of time. It's not something that you become. It's not something that you do day in and day out. And it's your habit. It's in your nervous system, like ingrained, right? It's like you wake me up in the middle of the night and, you ask me to do something that I've done 1,000 times over. It's not a big deal, right? But if you do something for 30 days, it's not going to automatically just become the thing you do. Like, period. It's just not. And it's the same thing with skill sets. It's the same thing with mastery. And, and those examples kind of, I would say, trickle into just every single area of life. And that's why I wanted to bring this up today, because the conversations that I have stem from, like obviously every day when I'm in the gym, we're talking about coaching and the changes that people have in life, right? And why it's so important to find these keystone habits, right? These small hinges that swing big doors, right? Hey, have you tried drinking 2 glasses of water before every meal? No, I haven't. Okay, let's just do that for like 14 days. See how you feel about that. Oh man, they come back like, hey, I've dropped 3 pounds. Like I'm not as hungry after I drink that water. I feel more hydrated. Like I don't have as much headaches, right? And it was like one small thing. But if we can follow that thing for a long enough time, that just becomes who we are. And that's just what you do, right? And in essence, that whole saying, like, so good they can't ignore you, ends up really like going into everything. Steve Martin said it from a standpoint of like acting, right? Where And you could say in your career, that would be something that I would point out. But it's the same thing, like I said, like you have a friend, you have a colleague or an acquaintance where you can't ignore them. There's something that they do so well. I mean, like I said, whether it's just their health, you're like, wow, like, man, this guy's like 47. He's got, 3 kids, but he's just like in amazing shape. And I'm 25. I got no kids. And, and like, man, I got such a tough time staying in shape, and my excuse is I don't have time and yada, yada, yada. Right. And we talked about in one of the previous podcasts about models, right? About modeling, like downloading the app, right? For how to get things done. And so, this is kind of like this is something that I keep bringing up is like this whole bridge, or I love to see it as a continuum, right? At least when we talk about health and fitness, there's a continuum, right? It's a line. So if you're watching me on video, you see me use my hands. If not, imagine it. So there's a line on one side, like at the end of the line is death, right? On the other side is like optimal health. And whatever optimal health means, it's like, you're half like you're an X-Man, like you're on some crazy shit. But everybody lives somewhere in between, right? Now, the thing is, if you haven't taken care of yourself, you might be closer to death. And I don't say this in a judgmental way whatsoever. Honestly, like I'm here to help you get, to the other side of the spectrum. But, you may have low back pain, aches and pains, headaches, joints are hurting all the time. Like, low energy, this, that, and the other. So and on the other side of optimal health is like just somebody that, man, gets up, tons of energy, hormones are great, sleeps well, can do tons of activities, still have energy to come home, play with the kids, no aches and pains, and so on and so forth, right? And pretty much the whole like so good I can't ignore you. That means the person that's closer to optimal health is very most likely, obviously genetics is somewhat of a factor, definitely is, I'm not going to ignore it, but more or less, when you look at that person's habits, that's further down that optimal health line, you look at that person's habits, you're going to start seeing, oh man, on a daily basis, they do some type of movement. Maybe they're not training and lifting weights every day, but they're doing some type of movement. They're going for a walk with their dog. They're going for a hike. They're doing, some flows. Maybe they play some tennis or pick a basketball. Then they lift 2-3 times a week. Right? You start looking at their day, you start looking at their week, and there's a certain picture of it, right? And then if you took the timeline back, you'd be like, oh shit, they've been doing this for like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? And the other person that's further down the line, closer to that, the death part, as dark as that sounds, you look at that, the habits of that day, and they're different, right? So I think that the most important thing that you can take from here is like shifting your frame, shifting the perspective, understanding that like rather than putting the focus into, right, have a goal, have a big hairy goal, right? Audacious goal, whatever they call it nowadays, right? Have it, like cool, have that, right? Have that vision. But on a daily basis, focus on that behavior. Focus on like, man, like how do I, like you want to start, like a video production company or become good at marketing. Cool. Like study sales copy, write it out like by hand, study it, like listen to, read all the blogs and the books of the top sales copywriters. You want to get better at coaching, coach. And when I was still playing professional, basketball, training 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day myself, like literally lifting weights, shooting drills, ball handling drills, 2.5 hour team practice. I was training people 3, 4, 5 hours a day in between, right? For a couple of years, legitimately. And like I was either charging nothing. And I remember when I first started charging, this is like 12, 13 years ago, it was like, I remember like charging €5 or €4 or something like that. I mean, it was nothing, right? And here I am, like, aspirations of NBA, and I was actually playing in some pretty damn good leagues, NBA Summer Pro League, back in 2004 or 5, I think. And and I'm still like so intrigued about getting better about my craft, this craft of strength and conditioning, that I just wanted to train as many people in different situations, in different circumstances, read books, like just dive in because I was so curious, right? Now, what if I just started a blog and didn't do any of that? I'm not saying you don't put stuff out. Like, don't get me wrong here, but if you're not actually practicing your craft, right? Practicing your craft. Like if you want to be a coach, coaching people, learning more about coaching, like from mobility to strength, to speed, to endurance, to how you program and do periodization, how you external, internal cues, like everything that falls under the spectrum of that. Like, I don't know, like I believe that you need to earn the right to write stuff. You need to earn the right to shoot videos. But the thing is, if you're starting, you should. But hey, learn it, do it, then teach it. Right? Don't teach it and then somewhere down the line, learn it and then figure out doing it. Maybe you won't even do that. Same thing with the business. Like, man, just because you watched a course on how to build a business, don't call me telling me you know how to build a business. Have you built your own business? No. What are we talking about? Seriously, what are we talking about? And this is kind of like this trend, and I'm having somewhat of a rant here, but I hope this rant, that there's a lesson behind this rant, right? That, hey, cool. Like you learn how to build a business, go build your business, even a small one. Build a small business. Once you built it, hey, check this out. This is how I did it. I learned it. I did it. Here's where I needed to course correct. Here's my obstacles. Here's, where I fell flat on my face like 52 times. And now I'm here and like, hey, I'm pretty, I've succeeded with this and now I'm continuing to learn. But let me show you how I did that. Right. And to me personally, like that's how things get done. You develop a skill set, you develop a mastery, you become so good at something that people can't ignore you, and then you can teach it. I have kind of a very interesting feeling about, having the business of coaching be your primary thing that you do, but there is no actual craft of building a business or having some type of skill set in a certain area that you then teach because you've been successful at it. Right. So obviously I'm out of breath because I was pretty fired up about this. By the way, like if anybody, if anybody knows like Russell Simmons and wants to holler at him and tell him that like I like Celsius drinks, the grape and the watermelon, that, just holler at me. That's free advertising right there because I love it. But the end goal is this: shift your mindset, right? I have it written somewhere. I actually do. I have this like line pretty much in a frame, and it says like, be so good they can't ignore you, right? And it's the question I ask myself, like if I want to go into like build something extra on top of Vigor, and right now we're building online coaching programs and all these different things. Like this is stuff we've done for a decade. And after a decade now, I'm like, okay, oh man, we should do this because it's going to help more people, and I'm going to invest in the strategies and mindset and softwares and stuff like that. right? But like, ask yourself, are you so good that people can't ignore you, right? And a lot of times I think what that does is it creates humility, right? It creates like for you to be humble and go like, man, there's people way better. Let me learn, let me apply, and then let me reflect, course correct, and repeat, right? Learn, apply, reflect, course correct, repeat. You can create that formula. That's going to be pretty damn good for you. And the more deep work, so focused that you do that process, the better you'll be and the faster you'll be. And the thing is, timelines. What are timelines? Well, listen, straight up. You ask how did Tony Robbins get better at speaking? I would say the people that he started with, they might speak once every couple of weeks. Tony Robbins was like, fuck this. I'm going to go like speak 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, like essentially almost every day. So 3 months later, he's got like 10 times more repetitions or 20 times more repetitions of deep, actual presentations than everybody else. And then so when you get people going like, hey, I gotta, I've been in this way longer, right? So it's like, man, I've been in the game for 10 years, but it's like, you've been in the game for 10 years, like not studying this stuff is Vic just like in the video right now? My man, Vic, you can come in and dap it up though. Cause
I didn't give you a video.
Here it's real. We keep it live. But the point of the matter is like, if somebody is doing focused work, like really focused, deep work for 5 hours a day, and somebody else is doing 2 hours every, 3-4 days, guess what? Even though that person's been in an industry or in something for like 3-4 years, and the other person's been in it for like a year, they might be ahead. Right. So it's not this, just because you've been doing it for a certain amount of time doesn't mean you're great at it. Doesn't mean you're so good they can't ignore you. All right. So with that said, action step, right? Action step. What do you want to do? Which area in your life do you want to move ahead in? Is it your health and fitness in the body, like we mentioned? Is it part of it? Is it your career? Is it something that you want to improve, in your current relationship or your family? Ask yourself, are you so good they can't ignore you? Are you a, what I would call a lighthouse, right? And I say this analogy a lot of times. What does a lighthouse do? It doesn't move. It just stands there and it shines, right? And it attracts, it brings people to it, right? So it's like, be what you teach. Right? Can you say that you are, I would say, once again, that people would go up to you and go, or do they already go up to you and go like, man, like I really admire, like fill in the blank. You know what I mean? Like literally, like you live that, so it attracts. You don't have to necessarily just say it and go out and do a ton of marketing. You just are it. Right? So ask yourself that question, write it out. Like, then what do you need to do? What book do you need to get? What course do you need to do? Which person do you need to meet to go into that direction so that you are so good that people can't ignore you? I will see you in the next Vigor Life podcast. Peace out. Coach Luka.